What's up? Almost 30. Hello.
Hello, everybody. It's Lindsey and Krista. Thanks for joining us. We see you twice a week, Tuesdays and Thursdays. If you're new to the show, welcome. We promise to always have honest conversations, hopefully make you laugh and make you feel less alone and maybe teach you a thing or two. Who knows?
Who knows? You can find us anywhere you can find podcasts. We're on YouTube now. We're doing videos. So come look at our...
Please leave a nice comment.
Come look at my orange eyeshadow today. We were on this call with our coach, Jessica Sharp of Sharp Brain Consulting. And I was looking at myself on Zoom. I was like, I have orange eyeshadow up to my eyebrow. And I was like, it looks like I
have moments though in this quarantine period where I'm like, I feel like putting on a full face today and like really remembering how to do eyeshadow, how to do an eyebrow, how to do the things. It's actually something I kind of miss.
I know.
Kind of miss it. Dude, you were showing me this hilarious video that was making fun of, or not making fun of, or a commentary on true crime. And I was like, we kind of have to talk about
So
this.
I was talking to you, I think I've talked to you guys about Joe Castlebaker, who's this comedian in Los Angeles. And it's a very specific type of humor that I think... I'm not being one of those people that's like, it's a specific type of humor that not everyone gets. Like, it's hierarchical. It's really fucking weird. And it's very me. It's like, I like stuff that surprises me.
Yeah.
I don't like puns. I don't like witty comments because there's no energy behind it. So I like whatever comedy it is to be very surprising and to like catch me off guard. I like it to be wild.
Yeah.
I don't know how to describe it. So he was doing this hilarious video where he was talking about, he's like, when your true crime friend.
Should we play it?
Yes. He's like, when your true crime obsessed friend.
I could maybe do it on the...
Do it on the old thing.
The freaking Bluetooth.
Yeah. I'll have Hayden cut this.
Yeah. Thanks, Austin.
Okay. Not Hayden?
No. Austin boy.
Sorry, brother.
Okay. What's his handle again?
Joe, Joe Castle Baker.
Okay. All right, let's cut back to this.
Her arms were cut off. Her legs were cut off. Her ears were cut off. Her tongue was cut off. Her nose was cut off. Her eyeballs were plucked out. Her eyebrows were then waxed. Her tongue was sliced open. Her hair was cut off. Her arms were cut off.
Dude,
this is what I do when someone asks for a spooky story, and the caption on the actual reel is when it's your true crime obsessed friend's turn to tell a scary story.
Dude. It's so true. I don't know how you can be in that. Well, there was that comment the other day on a post about your solo episode.
Oh, yeah. So I did a solo episode.
Yes.
Just like, I take them. I love them. I think they're life-changing. Why you should take them, how to take them, all this stuff.
Take solo trips.
And part of my thing, the tip was, it's like, we know this, but like truly unplug. So like leave your phone. I don't even think I said leave your phone in the room, by the way, but that's how someone took it. And they said like.
They were cute. They were like, I love you guys, but as a true crime obsessed person, it isn't safe for us to not be with our phones all the time. Like we need our phones with us all the time.
Love you.
I'm like, if your podcast is making you scared to live your life, I think we find another pod. I'm like, dude, that's so scary.
It is really scary. And I admittedly used to be a true crime fan. I just like the story narrative piece of it and like the suspense. I don't like scary things in general, but like true crime, I was kind of like, oh, this is interesting. And I would watch Law and Order. I used to watch like Rescue 911 as a kid.
Love that.
Okay. But now I actually can't. I can't watch or listen to any of that.
I just am like, what is that? I sound like I'm being judgmental, but I genuinely am curious because I'm like, what is the wanting to be in fear? Maybe it's like our addiction to fear. Like we have this like addiction to fear as in a society. And I'm not saying that I don't find my own ways to be scared.
Yeah, 100%.
That's the damn truth. So it's like we'd have this addiction to fear, and it fulfills that addiction to being scared because, I mean, isn't every case a woman? Is not every case a woman? And to listen about all these cases of women being murdered by men in these torturous and dark ways seems like not the most enlivening of, it seems.
Yeah. And it's also just putting that out there, like for people, I don't know, for some other fucked up people to like maybe copy. I don't know. I don't know.
It's true.
But it's also, there is some really great true crime podcasts that bring awareness to the stories of victims to like, so I see the value in that, but I mean.
Also, what about, I think we've talked to a murder podcast. What about the families? Do the families have say if their person, like their daughter or wife is talked about?
I don't believe so, unless they agree to be a part of it, or like I think you can do it no matter what.
Yeah, I think they don't get a say. I don't think the family would get a say.
No, but I think like some people do ask the family, like,
yeah, I hope.
Do you want to contribute? Like,
do you want us to
pictures?
Tell everyone about?
I know. Like how hard?
Yeah. I mean, who freaking knows, man?
Unless it's a case that's not solved, maybe it's gonna. I mean, a lot of these that are on Netflix are not solved, and since being on Netflix, either they're not solved or it's the case of like wrong person was accused, whatever.
Yeah.
And they bring the case back to court. They like revisit it. They revive the case because it's on Netflix or because it's this huge true crime.
Yeah, it's actually helped a lot of crime stuff to do that. So yeah, that's interesting. I don't know, man. I was in this Uber and there was this guy in Austin, and he was like obsessed with telling his female clients, the people that are in the car, he said, always sit. What was his thing? He's like, always sit behind the driver's side. Behind the driver, because then if a man is going to reach for you, if you're diagonal, he can reach back and grab you. If you're sitting next to him, he can grab you, but reaching behind is very difficult. So to always sit directly from the driver.
Ah,
yeah. And he said never sit in the front seat.
Good one. Yeah.
I don't know if he was warning me or prepping me.
I know. I was like, maybe he was telling you the opposite of what you literally should do.
But I thought that was an interesting thing. And there also too, actually there is a safety on your Uber app. You can find that there is something that will alert when you are feeling unsafe. So they do have safety precautions on your Uber app that you can look into, and I can find it, where it would immediately call someone to help you feel safe. I don't know what it is, but yeah, he was telling me about this. He's like, do you know about this on your app? You should know about this, like blah, blah, blah.
Wow. That's really kind of him to tell you.
Yeah, it was really sweet. I don't know where it is. Oh, manage. So it's under safety. So it's under your Uber app settings and safety. You manage trusted contacts, and then you can let your loved ones follow your ride.
Oh, so that's a good one.
You can let people know that which is really good to do if you're leaving late night.
Yes.
But it's interesting. I mean, if I think about it, not for the number of Uber rides that happen, the amount of cases is so small, which is not that it's not a big deal when there are cases, but I think people are safe.
Yeah, I do feel very safe.
I err on the side of safe. Okay, guys, so we have a special guest that's joining us.
Special guest?
Justin, my fiance.
I lost my keys, so I crashed the party, but I'm here.
He's here. And you actually came at a perfect time because I was just talking about the YouTubes we were watching last night.
Crazy.
How it was so weird. Like it was, and I think this is, well, first we were talking about murder and true crime, how people are obsessed.
Yeah.
We watched these YouTubes last night where these people go into these abandoned mansions.
Okay.
It is unreal. Okay, so we started with one. The clickbait was like in MTV Cribs abandoned mansion. It was this giant ass house in Boston. It had like a basketball court, a bowling alley, a sauna, and there was still tons of stuff at the house, but it had been abandoned for like 10 years.
Bankruptcy or what?
Who knows?
So yeah, we don't know. So it's like there's like this whole subculture on YouTube of like people go into abandoned mansions and like truly abandoned. Whoa. Like these are like $1 million homes
like
that
multi
they didn't sell. They just left them.
Yeah, just like left for dead. There was one in Atlanta, I think. It was insane. It was probably like a $10 million house.
Yeah.
Old, historic, like really ornate, really gaudy, all of these things. And it looked like there had been people living there. Like junkies had kind of taken over, filled with stuff. Stuff in the kitchen,
Everywhere.
Stuff. It's like, it's almost like Hoarders.
Ooh, that's creepy.
It's Hoarders
it's
meets
creepy.
creepy. It's like Hoarders creepy. The last one was insane. So now that YouTube's seeing that we're liking what we're seeing, the last one was insane. It was a billionaire's abandoned house in Japan, $200 million abandoned.
Left, yeah.
It was fully marble. The place was fully marble. It had like black and white Masonic tile, and then everything was like marble statues. There was there was like a dead bear rug. There was a dead like tiger rug. The $200 million house completely fucking abandoned.
And was it like kind of run down, or was it completely like new?
So
just
like natural wear and tear, like the paint was kind of like falling off, but nothing, mostly intact.
Wow.
Yeah, and so it's like it's so many questions.
There's like a bathtub. There's like a picture frame on the wall.
You could have sold it for millions
at
least, even at a big discount, but like they just chose to leave it.
Yes.
And there's a bunch of these.
But they still own it.
Who knows? I think
someone owns it, but they're just like never going to move in again. They're never going to sell it. It's weird.
Yeah, like they'll have like shoes places. It's weird because you see like the last of the remains of what they were doing that day or something.
Yeah, like
guys, I think this is a murder scene.
No, that's the whole time. So the whole time you're wondering what's going on. Sometimes you figure it out, but like a lot of times they don't really figure out why people have left. So you're it's captivating.
Yeah. And it's like broad daylight. It's not one of those like ghost hunter
it's
shows.
not scary.
Like it's broad daylight and they're just walking through this abandoned house. But yeah, I guess there's a bunch of these.
I think the one guy that was it was a billionaire, and the guy that was like looking in the abandoned mansions said, he's like, it's crazy to see the difference between a millionaire's house and a billionaire's house. And he was saying in the billionaire, he said that he got caught for something, that it was something with arrest, and he basically
he had to flee.
He fled. So who knows where he went? And it's so crazy too, like in our culture and society, that there are people that like don't have homes, and then there's people that have $1 billion or multi-million-dollar homes and just like flee.
I guess when you're a billionaire, just leaving a $200 million mansion is like, well, all right.
It was insane.
Wow.
It's such a weird thing. So we were watching it yesterday, and I was enthralled.
How did you find this? What was the
on
search?
YouTube knows you.
No, yeah, YouTube has you locked.
YouTube knows me.
They know just what to throw at you. That's like, hey, like this isn't what you normally watch, but you might like it.
Yes,
and they got us.
And
we watched like 5 in a row.
Honestly, because you're like, and you kind of fast forward to like parts of the house. You're like, okay, I'm done in the
Remember his bedroom? His bedroom was like.
Of the billionaires.
Yeah, I don't know how to describe it.
It was probably 3,000 square feet.
At least. Like, the camera couldn't even see to the other end of the wall.
Yes.
Like, it was just like this huge open space. It looked like a ballroom, and it was just his bedroom.
Yes.
Oh, remember in the picture on the bed?
Yes, and there was a picture of a woman on the bed.
Like, an actual framed picture that was
weird
just like thrown on the bed, and she was like, yeah, even more questions.
Yes.
It's hilarious with the bedroom, like, a bedroom that's so massive. It's like a bed can only be that so big. I know.
He had his bed on like it was 3 rows. So it was like really wide, less wide, and then like the mattress.
And then it was like this. Is double king a thing?
Yeah.
It had to be. It was
like 2 kings?
Two kings.
2 kings.
Enough for 2 kings. It was, I mean, I think the square footage of his bed is bigger than our bed.
Yes. It's funny because the one that was in Georgia, like the Atlanta one, or I think it was outside of Atlanta, it was like the $10 million one, trashed. Junkies had lived there, I think. And I'm saying that like, I think people, everything was ripped down. Yeah. There was trash everywhere. There was like all this stuff. That's like United States. It's like people fucking trash everything. And then Japan, pristine.
Of course.
No one had touched a thing in that house. They could rob that place, be good forever.
Oh yeah, there was.
I'm like, why isn't anyone robbed?
There was
this
like
place?
full. What was it? Was it bronze?
Yes,
or
bronze
copper?
and copper statues.
And the guy was like, "Yeah, I think this just. I mean, it's maybe as tall as a table, so like 2.5, 3 feet." And he was like, "Yeah, I think this is maybe $4,000, $5,000, something like that." Which is like,
whoa.
like if someone were just go in there and take it, but like everything was just untouched.
Pristine. Who knows if that's like. It was just interesting to see the difference.
Yeah.
I know. It was so weird.
Why don't they just like, I don't understand the ownership thing. It's like, why can't you just like knock it down and or sell it or whatever?
100%.
But I guess if someone owns it, then it is
We
what
need
it
to keep
is.
watching and figure it out.
Well, yeah, I have so many questions. Is like, things happen all the time, and then the family will just sell the estate or whatever.
Right,
But like,
yes.
why hold it? That's the
I
crazy
know.
part, especially a place that big.
Yeah. It was so weird.
Weird.
Yeah, it's so fascinating. And like sometimes like the pool still had water in them.
Yeah, yeah.
So I'm freaked out.
It was
It was
freaky.
from freaked out. But
Is
the
there like a
basketball court
secret
was sick.
door or something?
Oh, there's probably
somewhere?
all
Oh,
kinds of those.
wow.
There
That's
has to
so
be.
You know?
Especially in that Japanese one. There's a whole under.
I need to
There
look
has
up
to
that
be.
Japanese
There's
one.
tunnels. Yeah, there's tunnels, I'm sure.
Yeah. And these, I mean, I guarantee you some people have heard of these because some of the videos had millions of views.
Yeah.
And there's like entire channels dedicated to this. We stumbled across something big.
We should start our own.
Oh my gosh, I'm down.
Yeah, it's so
Abandoned apartments.
Yeah, honestly.
less,
Literally.
less cool.
Yeah, like the less glamorous. It's like, here's a cereal bowl from 3 weeks ago. Yeah, it's a fascinating thing. But
Oh shoot.
I mean, this is what we're getting into at this point into freaking quarantine. Like, what the hell?
I know.
What's going on?
I know.
I was like, what? Take me to Mars. What can I watch right now that is so
I'm getting Dylan into Gaia.
Gaia is so good.
He's like,
Oh,
"What's
Gaia's
Gaia?"
good.
And I was like,
What have you been
"Let's
watching
just
lately?
watch."
Ooh. I was half asleep last night, but one was good. A friend of mine sent it to me. It was about ancient cave paintings.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, cool.
And so they look like animals, or there's some that are dragons. And I think what they were trying to do, and again, I'm like, might be butchering this, but they were actually saying that the way that they were drawn actually were representations of celestial
Yeah.
alignments at that time. So
Oh,
it
okay.
looks like it's a deer, but when you actually, man,
When you place it against
Brutal.
like the night sky,
yeah,
Uh-huh.
it was like
aligns to certain
yeah,
constellations.
exactly.
Yeah.
And it happened to be the exact alignment like at that time based on the dating. So it's like, how are these
Whoa.
people that were essentially like prehistory, like nomadic, no real language at the time, like what we think is like just grunting, right? Like they're just early humans, have some sort of knowledge of
Oh yeah.
stars.
Yeah.
The most.
And so, and they found them in, I mean, these in just like one place. They found them in Italy, South America, Asia. So all spread out. It's like,
Wow.
it's crazy.
What's
Yeah.
the
Wow.
one that's in, I forget somewhere, but they have these drawings of basically extraterrestrials. There's like hundreds and hundreds of drawings of these like certain type of extraterrestrials. And then in Australia, because that's where like the oldest indigenous people peoples were, they have tons of drawings on caves too. And I think they call it something. They call extraterrestrials something.
Oh.
And it's like known in their culture that extraterrestrials visit their land.
I do know one in Africa. I think it's Mali. Am I saying that right?
Mm-hmm.
The Dogon tribe. So they were super indigenous, one of the oldest tribes, like central, I think, man, I'm wrong here with geography, but I think it's like Central Africa-ish. And they would always say like, oh, the gods came down, they told us about here, they come from this. And they knew that there's Sirius star called Sirius. And then they were
Sirius
talking
star
about
system.
yeah, and they were talking about Sirius B, which is smaller and behind, and we discovered that like 20 or 30 years ago, and these people have been saying like this is where we came from,
Yeah.
which is super fascinating. So
And there's some tribes that call it like the time before the moon, because the moon wasn't
Yeah.
always we didn't always have the moon. So there are tribes that have talked about the time before the moon, which is really interesting too.
It's always interesting to go back to those texts because, you know, if we can't, like, if present day 2020, we can't wrap our heads around what they're talking about, we just chalk it up as, you know, legend or myth.
Yes.
So they'll write everything. It's like, hey, here's how we did this. Here's how we did this. We travel around, blah, blah, blah. It's like everything is spot on. But then once we run across something that doesn't quite make sense, instead of trying to investigate or to look into it.
Yeah, that's such a hilarious part of it.
We're just like, oh, they didn't know what they're, you know, they're too primitive to actually.
That's such a hilarious part that what we do, it's like every single person before us was talking in myths, but we're talking in truths.
Exactly.
Like, what is that? Like that we believe that everything was a myth before.
Or it's very selective.
Yeah.
It's
very
selective
selective.
because
Unless it goes along probably with like biblical,
Exactly.
Christian.
Exactly.
well,
like-
because there was reasons for doing myth, right? If there's something that's hard to explain, or like what they do is they would personify certain things to make it easier to pass down before you could write things down. So it's like, okay, like here's this story, so we're gonna of the SAR system, but we're gonna say like, you know, it was certain animals or gods. So myths did exist, but some of it is gray area because some of it's like not, these are like daily accounts, right? They're in a journal and not like a big mythical like epic or anything like that. So what's crazy is when they stumble across these, like I said, if we can't understand what they were talking about or something doesn't make sense to us, we just immediately be like, oh, well, they're too primitive to actually be onto something.
Yes.
Which is like, you know.
Well, that's what we do as a culture with so many
Right.
things. Like I was saying that, you know, just last thing, I was saying that with our government, that it's so funny that we know that every other government is corrupt, but we don't believe our own is corrupt. It's like we know that every other country has, you know, like judicial system or government bodies that like cannot be trusted, but we trust ours. It's like,
It's almost like a self-reflection. Like,
Yeah.
it's like where you live or who governs you is kind of a reflection of self, and to believe that like
Yes.
it's corrupt might say something about you, which it doesn't.
Yes.
But
Yeah, it's crazy. Anyways, welcome to our dinner table. Welcome to our dinner table discussions.
what do you want to
It's-
eat?
It is it's awesome. The studio is awesome.
Thanks.
How
Every
you
time
like
I come,
it?
it's completely different.
Oh,
Yeah.
really?
Oh, sorry, not different. Like it's progressed. That's what I
Yeah.
mean.
Yes. Yeah, now we're doing video.
Hopefully that's the goal.
That's like, oh,
Progress,
baby.
baby. I'm excited about the episode today.
Yeah, today's episode with Aaron Alexander
It's perfect for this time. Perfect for quarantine.
Perfect.
Talking
Perfect.
about the body, alignment, health, nutrition, living holistically. It's going to be a really, really good one. Really helpful.
Yeah, he's the founder of the Align Method. Actually, Justin, you need to listen to this one. I feel like with,
Awesome.
and because he talks a lot about, and us too. I mean, we're sitting a lot, but even with you being at a computer and just like proper alignment, it affects not only our physical body, but like mental body, like everything. And I didn't realize that. Just like the alignment of our spine over our hips, our shoulders, everything.
You're making me fix my
I know, me too.
posture right now.
But we talk about alignment, we talk about mobility, we talk about mental health, we talk about social health, which is really interesting, just like being in community and how this time, like during the pandemic, it's all sorts of crazy and why it's affecting us the way it is. We talk about hacks for this time during the pandemic, including like sun, boosting the immune system with plants. So it's a really interesting conversation. Aaron is incredibly smart. So
awesome.
yeah.
Yeah,
I think
he's
you're
so
gonna love it.
sweet. And you can find him at Align Alexander.
You can find Aaron on Instagram at Align Podcast. He's also the author of the Align Method. He also sells incredible Align bands that are great and very home friendly. I just like wedge it in my door, and it's great for stretching, working out, etc. And then he has the Align Method online program.
A lot of people are going to get aligned.
Align.
It's going to be amazing.
Baby.
You guys
Thank
enjoy
you.
this episode, share it with friends. That's how we've grown. Any friend that, you know, is working from home that needs a little support in aligning their lives. And then we will see you at our Jenna Reese workshop, which is on Breathwork. So Wild Hearts Breathwork, if you're interested and it's your first time trying Breathwork, this is amazing. You can do it from the comfort of your own home, or if you're a seasoned Breathwork person, Jenna Reese is one of our favorites.
Yeah.
She's so powerful and kind and seasoned and trained, and
You
we're
gotta
really
breathe.
looking forward to that. You've
You
got
gotta
to
breathe. You can't just like stop. You know.
I feel like I'm high. I'm confused with like what's going on.
I love what's going on?
I'm here to stay.
You can get
like and comment if you like this. If you don't, I'll never come back.
Okay.
Okay, so we'll see you at you're going to go to the workshop then.
Great.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, perfect.
You can go to almost30.com to get your tickets. All right, everybody.
All right.
Enjoy this one.
Enjoy this one. We'll see you on the other side.
Bye, Justin.
Bye.
Love you guys.
Love you.
Bye.
There's a quote that I got from Ram Dass.
Of course.
Some of that I
And you're going to say the quote I said
I really
yesterday
love
on
a
the
lot.
show.
Really?
Mhm.
What is it?
You can say it. I'll let you have it.
She did say it.
I did say
Is it that death is perfectly safe?
Oh, no,
that's
not
a new one.
No, I had the one. It's like taking off a tight shoe.
Oh, that one too.
Yes.
Also true. So that would be the death.
Okay, so you
that's
said a
more
different
death as a
one.
relief.
Yes.
But there's the other part of moving through the world with kind of this consistent underlying fear, whether you realize it or not. I think there is, for the most part, no matter how big and tough you are, most people have some underlying fear of their own demise. And the more that you become attached to the idea of yourself, this goes more to like Ram Dass stuff, the more attached you are to the idea of what you are, the higher likelihood of actually having like the loss of a thing.
Yeah.
But from a la Ram Dass and lots of other folks, they would recommend putting more emphasis into like the soul layer of yourself, because that goes on forever. So there's nothing to fear, as opposed to putting all the emphasis into, I got to get that car, I got to get that money, I got to get more downloads on the podcast, I got to get more follows on the internet, and I got to like step up my status.
Yep.
If that's where all of your bandwidth is going into, there's nothing wrong with either side, but for certain you will lose that.
Mm-hmm.
So the sooner that one could start to put a little bit of energy into that like soul layer, coming from like Ram Dass talk, the more less you have to be concerned about, because that never goes away. It's here, it's then, it's later, it's always was, always is.
In the documentary, it was so powerful when he talked about how after the stroke that it allowed him to go in even more.
Yeah.
And he's like, this is so wonderful. Like he was speaking to, when we're talking about the Ram Dass documentary that's on Netflix.
Yes.
And him speaking to the power of him being quieter more and really being able to like go into himself and like the infinite possibility of his soul was so beautiful. I was
It's
like,
the best 30 minutes you'll spend on Netflix.
Yeah, it was.
I
It was so
think.
peaceful.
Yeah.
It was so peaceful.
Do you guys ever listen to his audio books or anything?
I should.
I listened to a lot of so East Forest has incorporated
his album's amazing.
Yeah, the
Yeah.
Ram Dass album is
yeah.
so beautiful. I use that to meditate a lot, but I haven't listened to a lot of his audio.
I highly recommend it.
I want to
Okay.
do some Ram Dass in like an Osho moment. Peter
Ooh.
Kelly loves Osho.
Mm-hmm.
Want an Osho moment?
Yes, I want to. I want an
hell is
Osho
that?
moment.
60 seconds
Should
of
we
Osho.
do an Osho moment
I
right
want
now?
a Blinkist of Osho.
I'm open.
No, I want to just read more.
Do you want
about
to do like
Osho.
Wild Wild Country?
Yes,
What's it called? Wild
exactly.
Country? Oh, you want to do
Yes.
like a cult Osho moment?
Yes, that's the
I'm in
kind of
support
moment
of
that I'm
that too.
looking to have.
If you're gonna do a cult, I would say 2020 is the time to start.
Have you ever been asked to be in a cult or found yourself in
Yes.
an environment where you're like, oh, this might be a cult? And cult I don't think of as bad.
Yeah,
So I'm wondering like
I think
what
you're
your
always in
perception of cult.
always in cults. Like my belief system of what, if I look back, in retrospective, like any time frame in my life, I feel like my beliefs and the people that I followed and the thoughts that were streaming through my head and all that, it was kind of created by that era in my life. And then I come to another level and I'm like, oh, I don't believe half of those things, but I was so emphatic about those at one time. So I think you're almost lucky in a way to be in an overt cult, because you're like, oh, this is a cult. where it's like Ram Dass having his stroke, where you're like, oh, okay, like a hard truth. Like I really get to step back and recognize. So if you go, it's like drug addicts. If you're a drug addict, in some ways, because it's such an obvious thing, like your community wants to reach out and help. You're like, wow, I've got to do some work. I really need to reflect. I need to look at myself. Where did this come from? What am I trying to get away from, or any of that? Whereas if you're just an addict to your cell phone, or an addict to power or wealth or relationships, codependence, any of that stuff, if it's socially acceptable addiction, that's actually it's more insidious in a way.
Yeah, like
so
the
I would almost say
extremist.
I would almost say like, you know, if you're in a cult, you're like, okay, I can really look at this. But I think we were always in
look
cults.
at what? Like you're like looking at the leader.
Well, you get to have the moment of realizing like, wow, I was brainwashed by some shit for 2 years.
To the extreme measure, or like it's like having the extreme pain, having the extreme situation, or having like the daily numbing of social media, of codependent relationships, of whatever. And so going to that extreme, usually you can like have that come to Jesus moment, where with the other things you're kind of just going through your normal life because everyone's doing it.
Well, the worst would be to get to the end of your life and realize that you missed out on experiencing it to its fullest potential. You know, having your, you know, like Maslow talk, like your actualized self, or maybe experiencing love to its highest potential, because maybe you went through the majority of your life in kind of like this fear place if you didn't want to get hurt. You know, and so could you imagine making it through to age whatever, and you're transitioning out of this body, and you finally drop your fear because you finally don't have anything to fear because there's nothing to protect because you're out of here, and you're like, oh, like I could have loved.
Yeah.
And you're like, well, maybe next reincarnation.
Too late.
Not this time.
Dude. With everything, I kind of want to like meet you where we are now, which is like fall of 2020, and we haven't been moving the way that we want. We haven't been seeing people in the way that we're used to, traveling, etc. And so I'd love to start with like how you've been doing and how you've been adapting and feeling around that. And then we can get specific.
Well, I mean, I think I feel like I got to learn a lot throughout all of this. And I think if you begin paying attention to any sector of your life, you will learn a lot. But because of all this stuff, it's forced me, at least, probably most people listening to this, to really start to at least have some more space to introspect, time to start to look at like, what do I actually give any shits about? What's my role in the world? Does the things that I project out into the world matter? Is it actually supportive to the global tribe or my community, or is it just me trying to flash images to get attention? So that's been really helpful to have a little bit of like, kind of like a real talk of just like, what am I doing with my time here?
Does it matter?
Does it even
care?
matter? You know, and previous to the, you know, all like the virus stuff, I think I was much more, and still am, when life goes good, it's easiest to get on that, like the ego layer.
100%.
You know, and so it's like the nicest people oftentimes are the people that are in the roughest spots, because they kind of step away from being like, I'm the shit. Like there's research with this where researchers rig board games. It's like Monopoly. And they put people in positions where they're like, oh, wow, you start off with a hotel and all this stuff. Like, you're going to win the game. You can't not win the game. And so then they go through, and then by the end of it, they start reasoning all these reasons why, like, well, I did this and I played it that way. And like, they still will take credit for winning the game, even though they literally all they had to do was just shake the die and just be there, and they win the game. And they start, being condescending and looking down at other people, and meanwhile, the other people, so the winner will start to identify with the piece moving around the board. Like, I am the piece, and then the other people that are losing, they're forced to be like, I don't even like this. This is a stupid game. I don't really like this game. They start looking out at other games. They start examining the board, and they look under the board, and they start to kind of be a little bit more introspective about what the game is. And so previously, I think I was much more like, I was the piece, and it was just more. All I wanted was just like, okay, how do I got more money, more podcast downloads, more, band sales and book sales, and just like more. And during and now, there's been much more of like a sensation of like, truly, like, I don't know if I even care about any of that. Do I even care about hosting a podcast? Do I even care about getting, suggesting people read my book and increase book sales and all that stuff? Like, and the answer is I do think it's valuable. So I'm coming back around to yes, but at least I've had that time to have that question.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Because the more likes you get, the more you matter in the world.
Exactly.
Everyone knows that. So every like is like mattering. Every like is impact.
Every like is impact.
Yeah, that's an interesting thing. I think in the industry or the world that we are in, it's so numbers based, data based, and it's what's interesting is that it's like a lot of the impact is not tangibly seen. If someone hears on a show something inspiring to them, they'll go to their relationship and they'll maybe change the way they approach their relationship, or maybe they're doing something posturally that changes how they operate in their day. But then on the other hand, it's like, okay, so how is that shown back to me besides like a DM? And it's like, I guess it's with a number, with a follow, with a like, with a download, with a whatever. Whereas like, and then that transcribes to money in some way. So it's like a weird net in the world that we live in with what we do, of like how you determine your impact and how you determine like the value of what you do. And there's such an ebb and flow to it.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think that I did a conversation with somebody earlier today, and they're like, how do you define something like hustling or something like that? And happy hustle was his like thing. You know, like, how do you happy hustle? And I'm like, I don't even like the word hustle personally.
Same.
But I would say my response was authentically being of service. You know, and so something that I find, and I know that you guys also are kind of like triggered by this more new agey jargon. But I appreciate this about you guys, where you're sensitive to people that are inauthentically being authentic, inauthentically being, being vulnerable, being empathetic, being like all of the things. It's like, oh, like the polls say we're supposed to be vulnerable.
Yes.
You know, so you're like, okay, like I'm going to do something vulnerable today. It's like, no, that's not it.
Yes.
You know, so you're just putting a mask of that on top. It just kind of exacerbates the issue for everybody else. You know, and so I was thinking of, this is kind of tangential, but I was thinking this morning about, when we consume food that, you know, ideally, say if you're going to eat a potato, if you eat a potato, it's just a raw potato. It's like, okay, you're not going to be able, it's not bioavailable. You're not going to be able to break that down. You know, so you need to like cook the potato, and then maybe you'll mash it up and you'll put some spices or whatever into it. And then you're able to assimilate that potato. And then in the same way, in order to actually assimilate nutrition, you need to have a viable gut flora. You don't want to have parasites and all that stuff in there. You know, so the way that we are communicating with each other, if you're moving through the world in such a way that, from like the gut flora analogy, you're closed down, you're not able to actually process any food. You know, and if you're consuming foods in the form of people, relationships, you know, your work, anything, the social media stuff you pay attention to, podcasts you listen to, and that food is like an uncooked potato, it's not available, then you're going to have a problem being able to assimilate that information. So it's a two-way street. It's like any relationship. So I do the work that I need to do in order to have the healthy gut bugs and kind of maybe trim out some of the parasite stuff and maybe like open my sphincters in order to be able to actually circulate and move, and peristalsis and all that. I can take stuff in. I've done my work to take in. And now I'm consciously choosing what I bring in that's available for me to consume. Then that's like a healthy organism. But a lot of people, I know this is a very roundabout way of saying something simple, but many people are closed off on either of those ends, and it seems superficially as though they're getting all of the nutrients, but in fact they're starving because they're not able to actually, the information isn't gettable and they're not receivable. And so if we can start to, you know, be operating in the world in such a way that like, I'm open to give and receive, and I intentionally keep people around me that are available for me to give and receive and have that relationship, then I'm fed. But if you're constantly in a world where it's like, well, that person's closed, I'm closed, and then we do this long dance for each other for a while, it's like we're starving the whole time. But it seems like we're being fed. I know that was a very meandery thought.
Mm-hmm. I love that analogy, actually.
Yeah, I literally wrote it down. It needs to be cut in half. Because I
can workshop it here.
Literally, is like this morning. I was like, oh, I think it's like food. I think I get it, but yeah, I need to like write it down and have a moment with it.
I love that.
Yeah, I mean, and especially in a place like LA where we found we have just incredibly real, for lack of a better word, relationships where people think about LA and they think, oh, there's a bunch of fake people there and they're just trying to be famous, etc. But I agree, it is that ability and willingness to be open, you know, because I think especially in the times that we're living in now, you can feel pressure to come to the table with like opinions and stances and things to like fight for and say. And I think like what's really beautiful when I feel really good is when I'm in a conversation or with people where there is just this openness of giving and receiving like thoughts and ideas and opinions without like the judgment of self or the judgment of others. That is really profound. But I don't think like our media really promotes that, right? So yeah, I'm just like reflecting back that I get that, and I think that's really important.
Yeah. Well, even like you right there, like I kind of went into like deep in my intellectual weeds of like trying to define some point that I was scribbling down on a pad this morning. And so that was a little bit more like mind based. And then I think both of you are very intuitive. So I think Lindsey was like, okay, we need to have some heartfelt communication. And so Lindsey comes in with that, where it's like all of a sudden, like just listening to you, I probably stressed people out with my last anecdote, my last story. And then Lindsey comes in and it's just like, oh. And I'm like, oh, I feel a lot better.
But even just yeah. And to that point, like just being able to have kind of these conversations, because so much of what we process as humans is like in our heads, right? Yeah. And so like, what have you found? Because I feel like, and correct me if I'm wrong, like I see you and I know you, but then I also see you on like Instagram, et cetera, but you have like a really solid group of people around you, I feel. Do you find that valuable, and how? Because I want people, we get a lot of questions about like, I don't know how to make friends. I don't know how to find my community. Like, I don't, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
As adults.
Totally. I think for me, the thing that's been really helpful for me to make connections with people, one would be like leading with the, authentically serving, so like going into any room and moving into that room saying things that people probably heard before, like, how do I make this room better? How do I leave this relationship? And that I did my damnedest to authentically, not necessarily trying to push anything or anything like that, but like leave that person better than they were before, and just see like what's my role here. And if you don't have a role there, maybe there's some other place that you do have a role, and you might be forcing yourself into some clique or friend group or something like that. That's like, those aren't really your people. Like you're, a circle and they're a bunch of triangles and you're trying to fit in there and you're like, why don't they like me? Why don't, it's like, well, maybe you don't really have a role in that group. That's okay. And so I think that's one thing is like looking at, and also maybe the role that you have might not necessarily be that you bring some material thing to the table. It might be that you bring humor. It might be that you bring, empathy or, like a heartfelt word like Lindsey to kind of balance out my like intellectual pontificating kind of rambling, so like it can be a lot of things that you bring, and that just might not be the right click in that moment. And then the other thing is being authentic with doing the things that actually bring you joy. Because if you are doing that, you're not in the places that you think you're supposed to be, but you're in the places that actually do open you up. They make your metaphoric digestive system available to be able to actually assimilate nutrition. If you're in that with regularity, now naturally you're going to be around other people that are doing that same thing. And then you immediately have something in common. And then right off the bat, you're like, oh, cool. Like I'm into archery. We'll go to an archery range. You're like, oh, tell me about your arrows. You have something to bounce off and talk about. It's like, okay, well, maybe we'll go hiking. And, so I think it's really important that if you are like moving to a new place, for example, or you've been in an old place and you just don't feel like you have good connections, to be honest with what actually brings you joy and do more of that. And then the other part of that is if you are honestly doing things that bring you joy, people are magnetized by that. So it could be that for a long time you've been putting yourself into positions that you feel like it's like the right thing to do, the cool thing to do, or it's the best thing for your career or whatever, but that's coming from that closed digestive tract. So the sooner that you can put yourself in a place that's like, oh man, I just feel good here, that, build it and they will come, be there in that position, and you'll attract the nutrients in the form of people that can actually, feed you.
Yeah, I think it's so important to just know yourself.
Yeah,
In both of those, it's like, what do you have to offer? And it's not like you have to go into every relationship like, I have to offer a shoulder to cry on. It's just, it doesn't have to be that, but it's knowing yourself enough to know how you can impact people, and then finding the right people that kind of are your puzzle piece. Like, what's the other side that you are looking for that's going to complete you or be a mirror for you. And then, people just doing what you want to do. Like, for your own personal joy is so important.
Yeah.
I think when people are searching, sometimes it's like, it makes it a little bit harder because it's always that lack mentality. But I wanted to talk about some stuff with COVID too, just with everyone being home, and not moving as much, and probably being in front of the computer more, and being on Zoom calls. Like, what have you been doing yourself, and what have you been teaching or telling people about how to be more aligned as we're home more and we're not able to do the normal fitness and health things that we usually do?
Yeah. Well, so one, you need to get sun exposure. So if you are, say, in a place where it's like illegal to go outside, for example, crack a window, open it up, make sure you're getting full spectrum of light. Make sure it's hitting as much of you as possible. Maybe, take your shirt off, take your glasses off, and allow that sun to actually be able to permeate your eyes, because that's helpful with making you literally feel happier. It tunes your neurochemistry. You having that exposure to sun. It also helps you with, helps prevent things like nearsightedness. So when people, and I believe it's in South Korea, perhaps China, maybe both, a really high percentage of children and adolescents are myopic. It's something like 93%, whereas previous times before the advent of being inside a lot and staring at things up close, especially like blue lit screens all day long, the incidences of that were very low. With I don't know the specific numbers, so I'm not going to try to bullshit it, but they've been dramatically going up. The more people go inside and remove themselves from sunlight, they literally, their eyes, they start to change shape, like you start to collapse in a sense. So you really need to expose yourself to sun with regularity. Also, to boost your immune system, you need to expose yourself to plant life. So when you are exposing yourself, being around plants, in Japanese there's a term called Shinrin Yoku, which means nature bathing. And essentially what that is they study the whole plethora of benefits that manifest from just like taking a walk through the woods. And so when you go through around plants, you're literally breathing in the chemicals. Like, that plant, it's not just over there. You bring a plant into your house, it's in your whole house. So you breathe in various different chemicals, one of which being called phytoncides, which end up literally stimulating your immune system. So when you're around plants, it boosts your immune system. That's a big deal. It also helps with patients in hospitals that have exposure to plants, or like a window to look out of. They need less pain medication. They also will be they'll be able to leave their stays. Typically, it's like 1 to 2 days earlier than what they would if they didn't have access to being able to look out a window, have access to plant life, because all of those things, they kind of send this subconscious kind of indication to your nervous system. You're like outside.
For our healthcare system, it's like that would be a grave savings.
Huge, man.
I mean, if we think about that, like the way we structure and can build hospitals by allowing them to have windows and plants, saving 1 to 2 days of people's stay is insane.
Yeah, billions of dollars.
Billions of dollars.
Yeah, but then you look at the other perspective, which I don't want to get too into like the political, pharmaceutical kind of weeds, but billions of dollars saved is billions of dollars lost for people that are selling you things while you're there.
100%.
So I don't know enough about that topic to really be like overly impassioned by it, but I think most of the things that we need to be really healthy and have longevity, and look at like the blue zones, Dan Buettner stuff. Those people are drinking wine and eating gluten bread and breaking bread with their family and friends, and they're walking up hills with regularity, and they're getting all the way up and down off of the ground, and they're working in dirt, and like none of that stuff really costs anything. But we're in a Western culture. We're in a place where we have access to more healthcare and biohacking gadgets and all of that stuff than anywhere else in the world. On paper, we're the healthiest culture in the world. Like we should be, ideally, if you look at what we have access to. But then statistically, I think 2 out of 3 Americans are either overweight or obese. It's a similar thing with diabetes and prediabetes. 3 out of 5 Americans report being lonely. So there's like all statistically, if you look at what's happening to us, it's like, we're going in a strange direction. It seems like each year, the statistics at least, which there's a Mark Twain quote says that statistics, what is it? There's lies, damn lies, and then there's statistics. So I'm always trying to be kind of like not overly deep into stats that I hear. But it seems if you read those things and you look around, it seems like we're kind of going in a direction that seems a little bit fatter, a little bit more diabetic, and a little bit lonelier. But meanwhile, at the same time, we're having more amazing gadgets that combat that. So it's like, maybe it's not a technological, advanced, scientific solution for this ancestral problem. Maybe it's just, take a walk outside with a buddy. And breathe in some plants. Maybe squat every now and again. Maybe play. Do you need to have that dogmatic fitness regimen, or maybe it's okay to allow yourself to start to bend your mind and your body and your joints into positions where it's like, what happens if you just play with a dog? The dog will turn you and twist you and do all these things with you that linear machine just wouldn't be able to do. What happens if you hang out with kids for a little bit? Kids, before they get indoctrinated with all of the beliefs of how they should stand, how they should breathe, how they should walk, the sports that they should do, the sports they shouldn't do, how they should dress, all of those stories kind of start to pervert their natural, biological, felt state. So I did an interview with Neil Strauss, I think it was like a year ago, and we were talking about his son, 7. And I was like, we were talking about fatherhood and this and that. And one of the things that he said, it was like his goal, he's very wise. I really appreciate like his, any kind of things that he suggests. And his perspective with raising 7 was, how do I not pollute him with too much of those stories? Like he's so himself right now. Like he's really in it. So how do I just facilitate the blossoming of that, as opposed to trying to put too much stigmas and dogmas and confines and structure around that person, but enough structure to allow him to move through the world, but not so much that he suffocates in it.
Yeah, totally. I wanted to talk about the phone biomechanisms. Like I thought that was so interesting in your book, and that's what you alluded to, is the fact most of us are right-handed, and so we reach for our phone in our right pocket, and that causes torque because we're twisting, right?
Yeah.
And then our neck too, and then our eyes are consistently looking down in the same direction multiple times a day.
Yeah, it's essentially putting like a musculoskeletal twist in your structure, because your eyes, you could think of your eye muscles almost like the reins. I mean, have you ever rode a horse?
Yes.
You pull the reins right, where's the horse go? Pull the reins left, where's the horse go? So your visual muscles, people can do this at home now, and I have this example in the book as well. If you put your hands behind your neck, there's this place called the suboccipital ridge, and there's all these tiny little muscles back here. If you put your hands back there and then you just look up, can you feel those muscles starting to contract? They turn on. You feel that?
Yeah.
People doing it at home. And even if you're doing this at home and you're like, what the hell are they talking about?
Everyone's in their car like,
just starting. Well, you could do one hand. Just starting to lengthen that tissue back in and around that ridge is going to be really helpful with the function of your nervous system. But the reason I'm doing that example is your eyes are synced up to your muscles. So if you're chronically looking one direction, looking up, looking down, it will start to create a little compensatory torsion pattern in those muscles in the neck And then that will compensate and bounce down into the spine, into the hips, and to the rest of the body. Will hold that tension. So until you come into a place where you get to relax those eyes, the highest likelihood is that you're going to have tension through the body, and you can get all the massage and all the things that you want. But if your eyes are chronically held in that position, you're just going to pop yourself back into that tension. And then the other part of that is your Dr. Andrew Huberman, who's a good friend, and he's just a brilliant. He's a professor at Stanford, and he does a lot of research around the way that your visual muscles affect your autonomic nervous system. So he reviewed the whole visual chapter in the book, thankfully, and he gets into how your eyes they are your brain. It's a continuation of your brain. So if your eyes are chronically held in that stressed state, you're literally stressing your whole central nervous system. So if you want to relax a little bit, if you're feeling like, maybe you're feeling almost like you got like adrenal fatigue, or you're always stressed, you're wired but tired, and you're in that place of like, I'm out of control of my nervous system. I'm doing everything I can. I'm putting CBD oil on my armpits or whatever I do. I read a biohack. But your eyes are chronically stressed because you spend so much of your time looking into screens, looking into cell phones, being inside closed walls where they're not able to actually look out into that panoramic vision. So to wrap it up, like an actual actionable tip that people can utilize, if you're feeling stressed, same thing that we had the tip of the exhalation with your breath, something that you can do is to calm your nervous system down is put your eyes into panoramic mode. So this is one of those toggles. This is a tool. So if I'm wigging out, I'm doing a thing, then I'm like, oh God, I feel like I'm coming out of my skin. I drink too much coffee. It's okay. Long exhalation. Maybe you could even do like a hum. It was helpful with the vagal tonicity and all those things. And also look out into the distance. And what that sends is a signal through your nervous system that, okay, I'm receptive. I'm taking it all in. That's what my mammalian animal self is doing. I'm out in the savannah. I'm looking at it's like Lion King.
I was gonna say Lion King.
Holding Simba, and I'm just looking out over the kingdom. Oh, wow, look at it all. Then all of a sudden, Mufasa, whoosh, you focus in. You see the attack. You see the enemy coming. Whoosh, your vision goes in, myopic, focused. So great that we have access to that, because that starts to stimulate the norepinephrine and cortisols and all the things to put you into action, ready to fight, ready or flight, or do whatever you need to do. The modern movement mold is structured for Mufasa to always be around. We're always in that state of really focused vision. But instead of Mufasa, it's your cell phone, it's your iPad, it's your computer screen, and it's your lack of just moving outside and like doing what you did as a kid. You go look at clouds. You go out in the woods, you look up at the trees, say, is that a bird? Wow. Your mind wanders. Your mind follows your body. Your body follows your mind. It's one and the same system.
Yep. Love that. I always wrote that down too about looking in the distance. That's been super helpful for me. And too, because I'm super pitta in Ayurveda, so it's very vata to look in the sky. So it's balancing too from an Ayurvedic perspective to just look in the sky.
Mm-hmm.
You seem like you guys balance each other.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
How would you describe your
She
traits?
looks
Fire and rain.
Yeah, literally. Gasoline and fire.
Isn't that cool?
How do we balance each other? I am kind of that person that's like looking up at the sky, and she's like what's cool about the balance is that like I'm reminded of parts of me that I am sometimes like afraid to really access, like that focus, like that having like this kind of bird-like perspective.
Mm-hmm.
She's a projector. And sometimes that scares me because I'm like, whoa, then I see the full potential. So, and that's just like a little human part of me that's like, ah. So it's cool to kind of like activate those parts of each other within the business and like in friendship.
Well, you need to have, it's like a water bottle, so in order for this to be an effective vessel, in order to get water into my face, I need that hard, structured, in this case, somewhat linear-ish structure to be able to hold the fluid. Mm-hmm. But if all I have is so like new age hippie circles are like, you know, screw the man, and, you know, like down with cell phones and down with everything, you know, we're just go out live in the woods. You know, it's like, well, those people, that's fine, but they're probably not going to have a lot of like ingenuity. They're probably not going to like really like get a lot of stuff done. They probably never actually really make it to the woods because they didn't have a container to get them to the woods. You know, and so they just kind of spin their wheels. It's too much fluid. You know, and then there's the people, it's like, well, if you're the bottle, the container, you're the walls and the structure, well, now you need some fluid to contain. You know, so when you find the fluid and the container, it's like, oh, we're really doing stuff.
Yes.
We're pouring some liquids into some faces now.
Dude, your analogies today are on point.
It's amazing.
You mentioned before, it was just a brief point, but I kind of want to go into it, the breathing through the nose only.
Yeah, sure.
What effect does that have?
Oh, so many things. You know, so there's a guy, Weston A. Price, that he was a dentist that traveled around different countries and specifically in search of like what the hell is going on with modern people's mouths. So a stupid high percentage of people suffer from a thing called malocclusion, essentially like crooked teeth, and you know, their upper jaw, their upper palate will be compressed. Like I experienced this as a kid. I had like a bell-shaped curve around my upper palate.
Did you get an expander?
Yeah, it's a terrible experience, but really helpful, really important stuff. And you can get that as an adult as well to create some space around your nasal cavity. So
because it could cause, I have a friend who still has it and might need like an expander or surgery of some kind, but he suffers from almost like a sleep apnea. Of sorts, because the tongue is like doesn't have a space to fit in.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah, so you can start to almost like choke on your tongue.
Yes.
Yeah, and so that's something that naturally, if you grow up in a more ancestral lifestyle, which I'm not, I try to avoid like romanticizing like hunter-gatherer, Neanderthal, like they had it so much better. I think it's just different. Like we've got a lot of cool stuff. Being able to like microwave a pita pocket, you know, and fly to Asia is cool. Like that's like, there's nothing wrong with any of that stuff. And not having, you know, hard food to chew and gristle and all that stuff, that strengthens your jaw. It literally forms your facial structure, you know. And so if you are only being exposed as a child to really soft food, you're missing out on a primary developmental stage in your life / the rest of your life. You know, you want to chew on stuff. So if you don't, you know, maybe chewing on a toothpick or chewing on some gum or something like that could be helpful to kind of add a little bit of that, like pound for pound, your masseter muscle is the strongest muscle in your body.
I thought your tongue was.
I think it's your masseter as far as being really tiny.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, that's what I've they're both quite strong, but your
we just want views on YouTube. Get that tongue out.
No, honestly.
Because the tongue is quite strong, but it's much larger. So the masseter, I think it can exert 200 pounds of pressure.
Whoa.
And it's just this tiny little guy, you know. And so your jaw is built to chew and rip and all that stuff. You know, and so when you're breathing, so that's one thing. Chewing is a major part of the conversation. The other part is like adding sugars and processed foods and all that stuff. But another big part is breathing through your nose. Your nose is structured to breathe air. Your mouth is structured to eat hot dogs and, you know, put food in. It chews or whatever. Vegan hot dogs, you know, whatever you do. But your mouth is built to chew. Your nose it's built to breathe. Like that's what it's for. And so when you start to outsource that process to the mouth, your body's not really prepared for that. It can when you're at really high, like in the Align Method book, I describe as like the fifth gear. You know, so when you get into the fifth gear phase of movement where you're huffing and puffing up a hill, you're at the top, you need to get as much air in and out as you possibly can. That's when the mouth is quite fine. But that mouth is like the nitric oxide or the nitrous boost on a race car. It's like, you know, Fast and Furious. You're at the end. You just barely need to win. You're at that point. But if throughout the day, so what that does is it sends those signals to your nervous system that like, okay, we're in fifth gear. But fourth gear, third gear, if you run your car in fifth gear all the time, you burn your engine out. So throughout the day, if you want to send a signal to your nervous system and your whole biochemistry that I'm calm, I'm collected, I got this, I'm all put together, I'm good. Even if you're under great stress, And I watch this with like fighters. I like watching UFC and all that stuff. I will look at the breathing pattern of fighters when they go back to their corner. And that, to me, if I were betting, I'm typically not, but if I was, I'd be like, oh, that's going to be a major indication of how they're going to do. So that person that comes back and they're really focusing on that nasal breath, it's like, okay, they're calm. But the fighter, as soon as you see their jaw drop and as soon as you see they're done. They've hit the nitrous boost. If they don't win in the next like 60 seconds, it's going to be problematic. And so when you're breathing through the nose, you increase nitric oxide into your bloodstream, so it's helpful with circulation of blood. You also, it creates a little bit of pressure. It's because it's a smaller passageway, so it forces those diaphragmatic muscles to come online. So when you breathe through your mouth like that, there's no pressure. There's no pressure. You breathe predominantly up in the top portions of the lungs, which is the smallest portion of the lungs. It indicates to your nervous system that you're stressed. So when you slow it down, breathe through the nose, you could even emphasize that exhalation. It's not only mechanically is it making your body move more effectively, but it's literally sending that signal, because the mechanics are tied in, to your whole nervous system that you're put together, you're calm, you're collected, you're safe. Once you go into that mouth breathing pattern, it's the opposite. And it changes the structure of your face, because this is the last thing I'll say on it. When you breathe through your nose, people can play with this right now. When you breathe through your nose, naturally your tongue will be up at the roof of your mouth, right? When you breathe through the mouth, your tongue hangs down the bottom. You get that receding chin. It's not attractive. So you, being ladies, or men or women, you will not be attracted to mouth breathers. You will not be attracted to people that have like the receding chin. You will be attracted, depending upon where you're in with your cycles. Actually, it changes, but you will be attracted to people with more prominent facial features, right? So you want a chiseled jawline. You want to be able to see that the lines of the face. That's like, whoa. That's like, man. It's like testosterone.
Wait, based on your cycle, so based on your moon cycle, where you can be more attracted to certain facial features?
When you're ovulating, you'll be more attracted. This is like way outside of my scope of expertise. This is some stuff that I've read. So there's somebody else that could probably go into it much deeper. But when you're ovulating, you'll be attracted to people that are more like chiseled jawline, chopping wood out in the woods, like raw, like full lumberjack man. And when you're not, then you'd be more attracted to someone that could be probably like a homebody and like safe and will support a child. And you kind of ebb and flow. And your voice as a woman changes, and your facial structures actually change slightly as well. So there's no static human.
Yeah.
Every day, every moment, you're a different person. And so like literally like the structures in your face will be different too. And you'll probably notice, you may notice, depending upon where you're in your cycle, you might notice more attraction from other men, and you probably notice being attracted to other men or women or whatever your preference is. Am I wrong?
No, I wonder if it's, I was just thinking, I wonder if it's like when you're ovulating, you are looking for more testosterone, I guess, to like fertilize an egg. So testosterone would lead to more, like the chiseling of the face, or like those masculine type features that are present when there is higher testosterone.
Correct.
And then the other parts of the cycle, it's like more of the balance that you're looking for, because you want the caring for the baby.
And historically, in many hunter-gatherer tribes, sex wasn't just purely monogamous, so it was more of like a tribal thing. And the belief still today in some places was that the child is not just from like one partner, but the child is a product of all of the partners that you have had sex with. And so then when the child comes out, it's like it's not just testosterone wood chopping guy and homebody guy and all that stuff. It's like, oh no, like it's the tribe's child. And so if you are in a smaller band of people, like sub 150, that's like this thing called Dunbar's number. Once you go beyond 150, it starts to kind of get hard for primates, for them to be able to groom each other. But it's hard. It's like the town gets too big to keep track of everybody. But within that small confined kind of band of humans, it's like, oh, we take care of each other. When you get into the world that we're in now, then it makes perhaps somehow more sense to be much more nuclear and separate and isolated, and we take care of our own.
Right.
And you can live in a place for 10 years and never meet your neighbor. It's very different.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's very true.
I know. I kind of felt guilty the other day. I was like, I haven't met I don't have a lot of people in my building, and I sometimes feel like I don't know. Sometimes it's my mood not to, because then I feel almost like a responsibility.
Right, if we have this relationship every day, I could be like, "Hey, Susan, hey,"
which I don't mind. It is a weird resistance thing I have.
There's Dr. Bob, who's like a neighbor. He's 2 doors down. And honestly, when I first moved in, I was like, I had this fantasy of me and Dr. Bob becoming like that. What's that book where he like Tuesdays with Maury? I'm like, wow, this is going to be Tuesdays with Maury. I'm going to hang out with Dr. Bob. He's going to teach me about life and it's going to be a thing. And then honestly, like he gave me his book and then he started to come over and then I was like, I don't want this. I literally was like, I don't want to be talking to Doc. And then I'd be by my car and he'd corner me by his car and talk to me for 45 minutes. And I'm like, dude, I have to go. I don't have time to be like Dr. Bob's best friend.
So I wonder in relation to like the facial expression stuff, if perhaps people's acuity to gestures will start to atrophy as a product of not learning that growing up.
Yeah.
You'll be a bunch of Dr. Bobs following people around. It's like, I never learned.
Yeah. Honestly. Dr. Bob's an angel, but it's like an angel, but you know, whatever. But I also wonder too if it's like, you know, I think that the trajectory and trend is for us to be able to read intuitively people's energies and people's auric fields and understand like my electromagnetic field will be in touch with yours. And I think that we'll be able to really be in tune to that more so than just like, it's kind of primal to be still on facial features if we think about it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? If we were thinking about like next steps in ascension, it would be telepathy. So it's like, it's almost like that might be helping that.
Yeah. I mean, you could certainly suggest that. Yeah. If you take away senses, then other ones you tend to have more bandwidth in other directions.
We need Neuralink.
Yeah.
I don't know. Do you think Neuralink's going to be I mean, I like the beginning stages of Neuralink. I'm not so enamored with like the long term. I
actually didn't understand. We're talking about the Elon Musk Neuralink.
Yeah.
I guess I'm trying to understand what the overall benefits were, and I didn't really grasp them.
I don't either. I mean, I think Elon Musk is an alien, and he
100%.
understands things that no normal people. It's interesting watching.
It's almost like he's introducing it slowly. He's like everything's already done.
Yes.
Yeah.
And he's just kind of
like the stupid
I have
humans
some
can only
pigs.
handle this much.
Yes.
Right.
Where like on another planet, it's
He's
actually
like, this
already
pig can
integrated.
still drink water. We're like, that's worth it.
It's interesting seeing. It's interesting watching life from the lens of history. You know, so if you look at like Elon Musk on the TV talking about Neuralink, and it's like 2020, you're sitting watching on your flat screen TV, and it's like you'll be telling your kids about this. And at some point, Elon Musk is gonna be one of those. He'll be like a Tesla, or like an Edison, or like an Abe Lincoln type figure, where you look back and like Elon Musk, and like kids are learning about him in school. It's very fascinating. It's as though, you know, you're back in the day and like Ben Franklin's out flying a kite around, and it's like, oh, there's Ben.
Yeah.
It's like, no, that's Ben Franklin.
What was JP Sears has a good video. It's like for people that have an unhealthy obsession with Elon Musk. And then he also has one too. It's like, he's like, for rich people that want to look like they care about the environment. And he's like, check out my Tesla.
Oh, yeah,
like he talks about his like Tesla. It's so funny. Yeah. I don't even know how we got there, but I just want to come back a little bit from Neuralink and pigs to like a work from home setup. Very, very 360. But I just want to come up like, what would be the ideal work from home setup for people that have to be at their computer now? They're working from home. Maybe they have Zoom calls during the day so that they can try to feel as optimized and energized as possible.
Yeah. So I have a whole chapter in the book, how to align your office, align your home, align your travel, all that stuff. And in the home travel office setup, the one big thing would be just making sure you're around windows. You know, so it's all stuff like you need to exercise your eyes. You need to have access to various different temperatures. All of those act as little hermetic stressors. They're little exercises for your body. So we think of exercise, we put it into the container of like, okay, exercise is like burpees, pull-ups, bicep curls, Zumba exercise. It's like exercise every time you get a little bit cold and your body has to thermoregulate and figure that out. That's exercise. every time you get a little bit hot, every time you look out in the distance, every time you focus in. All of those are opportunities to actually train your body. And that's what I mean. So when I go, I'll go, as you guys do as well, I'm sure, like go to certain conferences and things like that. And sometimes, whatever, do workshops and that, and people be standing around at this like health in quotation concert or conference, and they're just haggard and tired. It's just so tiring to just stand in place all day long. What a paradox. That it's that much more tiring for you to stand your ass in place compared to walking, laying down your back, sitting down on the floor, because you're circulating yourself. So when you go through those really simple ancestral ranges of motion that you can integrate in your daily life, it's like you can think of yourself like a pond, and you need to circulate the fluids throughout your pond. So typically people have a tendency of doing like one big pond waterfall surge a day. They just blow out the pond with like a big workout thing, and then the rest of the day the pond just kind of is like little dripples. It's just like it's like stagnance. So what the pond really likes is if you could start to integrate, maybe get like a comfy rug, like you guys do a great job here. Get some Moroccan poofs and some floor cushions, and like make it stylish, make it cool. It doesn't need to be like your aesthetic, you're like sitting on just a dry cold floor. Like make it cool. And with that, then people will be invited to go through a full range of motion with their hips, with their knees, with their ankles. They're going to open and close those pelvic floor muscles. They're going to get some mobility through the spine. It's a really huge deal to get that range of motion with regularity. And one of the best things that people can do is just simply make their home more floor hospitable. And what that will also translate to is, you might have more fun with your partner. You might have weird sex and strange positions and range. It's not just like, okay, honey, we're going to the bed. It's like, no. Like we can do it anywhere.
Yeah.
Like the whole house is comfortable, and it's like feng shui, and it's like a vibe, and there's like air coming in, and it feels like, wow, like you just feel alive. When you feel alive, suddenly you have libido. And so it's like if you're wanting to do all these things, it's like, okay, I live in this stagnant, consistent air temperature apartment with the blue lights, and I'm in that same hunched over defeated position since I was in kindergarten, stuffed into some desk that I didn't fit into, and now I'm 40 years old and I'm breathing through my mouth, and I'm expressing all these patterns of being a little bit stressed out, and all of a sudden I've got ED, and I'm like, I need some pills for this. It's like, no, you need to do any of these other things that we're talking about right now, and they'll start to aggregate and add up, and you'll be a more robust human being. But everything, it's like, who is it? I think it was Dr. Gabor Mate. He's like, do you guys know him? He'd be a great person on the podcast. He's like the world's leading addiction, psychology around addiction expert. Done, I think, like 3 podcasts with him at this point. He's just like, I like, am so enamored with him. And one of the things he's mentioned before is like how crazy it is that he gets paid very well to tell people the simplest stuff that they already know. So we're always waiting for like, okay, here's the grand solution. It's like the panacea. It's like everything. It's a little bit like I'm waiting for like some big climax to be able to share with you guys. Like, this is the thing. It's like, no, it's stuff that just hang out with your kids. Your kids are nailing most of these things. Get a chair, put your kid beside it, see what they do with it. One of the last things they'll do, unless they're mimicking you, is sit still on the chair. But if they are in a world where their environment is such that all they have access to is, things like they have a lot of technology, they have the iPad, they have, all of those things. And it's like, okay, it's more likely to just kind of slump into the couch and do that. But if you take that away, and you go to any culture around the world that doesn't have access to this stuff, they're throwing sticks and they're playing capture the flag, and they're, it's like the idea of just sitting in a chair all day staring into a screen is like wild. But in the world that we live in, if you're not able to do that, then it's like, oh, that's a problem. We need to medicate that child. And so it's the ways to change your home environment would be, think of your home almost like you become the shape of that place. And so just have a little moment of auditing and look around your place and be like, do I want to become the shape of this? You come in here, it's like, oh, it's like this kind of like salmon pink stuff with like this fun like 70s retro thing, and it's like plants, and it's like, oh, this is an expression of you guys. This didn't just accidentally happen, right? So if you felt more, maybe like more gothic emo, something like that, that was your expression.
That's my house.
Great. There's nothing wrong with anything. There's nothing wrong with anything. It's just again, it's like coming through and taking a little audit and saying, okay, what does this room mean? Because it has meaning.
Yes. Yeah.
Every time you walk into that room, it's confirming your identity. So if you're in that place of like, wow, I got a little, gun percussor momentum in my back here. I'm smiling. All right, cool. Maybe let's go clothing shopping. Let's get you a new outfit. I want you to feel fresh. I want to keep this momentum going. Right. All right, you want to go play ultimate frisbee or basketball, or let's go driving golf balls or something. Let's keep going. And you build and you build and you build that momentum, but you're going potentially against, ideally with, if you start to make some subtle changes, but you're going against the momentum of your whole life. So those little bits of, we're moving, it's like, it's a great time to clean your house. It's a great time to get rid of shit. You might be holding on to some painting that your ex got you from, 5 years ago that just reminds you of, the old past pain and this and that, but you don't want to let go. So it's like no, like this really snapped me into the present. I'm gonna get rid of all this stuff. I'm gonna bring in some new, and then from there it's like, man, this couch, it's not really my vibe. I don't really like this. I barely even sit on it. Every time I sit on it, it's like it's crunching over my posture, and it just feels, maybe I'll get a different couch, or maybe I'll try that floor sitting thing. I'm going to get a comfortable rug. I'm going to get some pillows. And tonight we're going to do, roll around the rug. Maybe we'll do acro yoga, and it slowly builds and builds and builds. Right. Maybe I'll get essential oils in my house. I'll change the smell, so when you come into that house, you smell these maybe lavenders or whatever it may be that makes you feel a certain way, more momentum. Now maybe I have to look at my relationships, because these relationships that I've structured, they want to hold me into a specific identity structure. Because if I start to change, maybe that will make them feel uncomfortable. Maybe it will make them feel like they need to change. They don't really maybe want me to change because maybe they don't want to change. So they don't want to rock the boat. Maybe I need to spend less time with those people. Right. Now I've created space from a couple people that might have been more like vampirical in my life, but I didn't realize it because maybe I was codependent. And now there's more space. Now I go to this other place that brings me joy, like we were talking about before. I'm there, and now, wow, because I have more bandwidth for these new relationships, they come in. Okay, I changed the color of my walls. My house smells like, essential oils, and I've got new friends, and I've got a new outfit. Holy shit. That percussor massage thing on my back, that was powerful.
Yeah. It's a life edit.
Yeah.
It is. I did an episode on like what I call the life edit, and it's just looking at all those things. It's like every single thing in your closet. Do you like this? Like, do you actually like this? Do you feel good in it? Single thing in your pantry. Do you like this? Does it make you feel good?
Yeah.
How you decorate, then your relationships and everything. But yeah, it's powerful. I mean, that kind of thing is huge. It's interesting how I've been coming back around to like dressing, like how you dress, and even like your environment of your home. Before I'd be like, oh, that's like, I don't want to be not vain, but I was like, I don't want to be materialistic and like focus on my clothes and whatever, or my home. And now I'm like, wow, like that is so powerful.
Totally.
To just like value yourself enough to feel good in what you wear. It doesn't need to be X, Y, and Z, but you just need to feel good in it. Or your home, like whatever it is that's going to make you feel good in it, you should feel permission to do.
Yeah, your life, you're like a sailor. You are on a boat.
Let's hear this one.
You are on a boat. You're on a boat.
We're on a nice catamaran.
It's a nice catamaran, right? So you got the sails.
Okay.
You need to position the sails in such a way that you catch wind anywhere you can. And so if you get wind from getting a little massage thing from your sister, pull the sails up, grab it, and then we're moving a little bit, but every opportunity that you have, that's what I was saying. It's like, in the book, I kind of just present all of these wind options. Here's all of the levers that you can possibly pull. Yeah. Pull any of them And then from there, you'll see the catamaran get a little, we're moving a little bit.
Yes.
You know, and then it's like, okay, let's compound that with another pull. Whoa, more. You know, but you need, if you're coming from a cold stop, like it's gonna take more than just a simple thing. You know, and so but the simple thing could be the thin end of the wedge that does make all the difference. So I wouldn't take away from the simple thing. You know, but it's like we need to allow space for that change to continue, as opposed to just being drowned out by the momentum of the previous.
Yeah, and I think too, like we are so results driven that these simple things compounded are going to make that difference, create that momentum. But people want the results of like, why isn't this essential oil changing my life? Or like, why isn't, you know what I mean? Like I'm kind of speaking about my relationship with my brother right now, where it's like, he's like, it has to work, right? Like these one, like the one thing. But to your point, it's like, it's being aware and catching that momentum in order to drive to the next thing that also creates momentum and change and that feel good feeling.
How have you guys been feeling through all of the last few months? I know that's a big, huge question.
Yeah. It's been like, it's definitely been up and down, but what I think is constant is just like, I do feel more space. So like that is like something that I'm pretty fascinated with personally, where it's like, oh, we're traveling less. It's not that we have less on our plates, but there is more bandwidth per se to actually like be with it and immerse ourselves in it. So it feels less like it's piling on top, and it's more just like channeling through and just feeling very much a part of it.
What's been like the unmentionable shit parts of the last few months?
They're unmentionable.
Yeah, unmentionable actually.
Maybe what are the mentionable shit parts?
Well, what are the mentionable shit parts? I don't know. I feel like, I don't know. It's hard to describe. And I'm very much like, when I'm in it, there's nothing else. And when I'm out of it, there's nothing else. So I'm feeling good now. So it's hard for me to like reach back to times when it was really hard. Yeah. You know what I mean? So, I think it's just been a year of contrast, a year of like, it's just fascinating, when you talk to everyone and even myself, it's like, oh, this year's been so hard. Everything's so hard. It's crazy. And technically we're living better than we ever have before in history of our knowance, history of our knowance, Not talking about like if we were in Atlantis or something, but it's like, so there's like that paradox of like, but we're living better than we ever have. Like, think about the way that we live our life. And then there's like, oh, everything sucks, the world's going to end kind of mentality. So there's that. And then there's, just, whenever there's a year of extreme growth, it's always like, oh man, like this has been either really hard and it's not often really beautiful that you learn so much, but it's the beauty on the other side. So it's just been, incredibly transformational. I think this would have happened either outside of COVID. This year would have happened for me anyways. But yeah.
I think with you guys, it's interesting because you do, both of you do a really good job with I think like making people feel special and like presence and, like you, even in this, like little things, like you take notes and you went through the book and you're like, you really like show up for the people that come into your world. And it's an interesting thing when that's kind of your mode and that's your work in this case. But also to have the space in your own life to be able to like fill your cup.
Yes.
And it's an interesting thing when like the cup is not full and then I have to go back into the role of like opening the cup up. It's like a very interesting dance.
Yes.
Have you guys felt that with things?
Yeah, I feel like I run around like I'm like, okay, I'm on the phone with someone, and then I'm texting someone, and then I'm in a meeting, and then I'm calling someone, then I'm walking, then I'm seeing someone. I'm with people all the time because I have a really good circle and I have tons of friends home, and it's amazing. But sometimes I'm like, where are you? You know, I'm like, where are you when you're talking about this guy that's not texting someone back, or you're calling about this and you're talking about, and you're in crisis mode with all these people and going through all these things. I'm like, okay, but where are you? You know, and I find myself not showing up in the way that I want to all the time because I'm like so maxed.
Yeah.
You know, because I have so many people that I care about, that I love, but it's like it's hard to sometimes be because it's so much.
Yeah. Yeah. I was talking with a friend yesterday, and we were playing paddle tennis, and that's like kind of like one of my many therapies. And he's going through all sorts of stuff right now. And so the beginning of it was just like talking about all of his stuff. And as we were about to play, it's like, well, one of the things that he has is like guilt that he's here playing paddle tennis right now. And within that, it's like paddle tennis, the metaphoric paddle tennis is so important because it's like you're purging. It's like you're healing. It's your posture of repose. It's your retuning your instrument so that you can actually go out and show up and be full you, have your cup full to be able to share. And that was just an interesting moment that I had with him. That was just like, if you are not here out of guilt, then you're not here. You may as well just not be here. You know, so while you're doing this thing that's restorative for you, if you bring all the baggage of the guilt and this and that, you miss the restoration. Yes. So going back to like the food analogy, this is why I'm on this like food analogy, like you close your system down to be able to receive that sustenance. And so it was just an interesting thing to like, that's something that I've been pondering on since yesterday, talking to him, of the value of being able to show up 100%, like with all of yourself in a thing, especially in the selfish things. You know, so especially the things I'm filling up, I'm going full, and then you can go too full, where now it becomes this weird narcissistic, you're starving in another way. You know, but I think sometimes we can almost like feel, or I can feel guilty for doing the things that feed me in a way.
Yes.
And then I end up closing myself off to being able to eat. And now I need to do more of that stuff because I didn't actually eat. I did the motions of eating, but I didn't actually eat.
Right. Mm-hmm. I think women too, especially, feel guilty for eating. So the nourishment is kind of missed. Yeah. You know, the ritual and like the actual nourishing action of eating is like, there's so much guilt and shame that it just kind of like can ruin the actual process and prevent you from being fed or nourished in the way that we seek.
Yeah. Yeah. So I wonder that, I think that's just a major conversation. When you look at a world that is filled with all of the doohickeys and, you know, everything that you could possibly have to make yourself the most raddest version of you, it feels to me like perhaps because maybe we lack a practice in presence, you know, maybe we lack like, I think the presence might be a big thing. You know, maybe we feel undeserving, you know, or we feel like, oh, I'm not worth this and that, you know, but as long as we're in that place, it doesn't matter what kind of technological gadgets and doohickeys that you have around, or you have the best food, you have the quality, the best of everything. If you're not able to receive it, you're still starving. And so I think it's an interesting thing just to like, again, take an audit of your home, look around and see what it's forming you into. And then also maybe going through and taking an audit of like, where am I at when I'm, you know, with my people? Where am I at when I'm, you know, doing any activity, when I'm at work? Like, where am I? Am I actually there, or am I pulled in all these different directions?
Yeah. Totally.
Yes.
Totally. I don't have any solutions or anything. It's just an interesting thing that I feel like is relevant for me.
Yeah. Yeah, balance needs to be struck. Sometimes I'm too far on the other end where I really like having time by myself.
Yeah.
But then I like kind of forget the value and see like where there is a part of me that gets filled up by being with people, and there's a part of me that, you know, just depends on the situation. But yeah, It's definitely, and it all comes back to just like knowing yourself and like what you really need. I actually appreciate when there was a friend the other day who was like, hey, like I can't go on a walk tomorrow because I really need the morning to myself. And I was like, awesome.
I sometimes
I was like, respect. And like, that's
love when people are like that.
Yeah. I really appreciate it because I'm like that, but like, I don't actually make the plans to cancel. I just don't do it. Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
I know that I need it. So I just don't engage with plans as often as maybe is normal. But yeah, I appreciate that.
What does knowing, sometimes I get flustered with ideas like that because it's almost like too big for me to digest. Like, what does knowing yourself mean?
Mm-hmm. I guess I'm talking about it in the context of like being present to what you need in the moment. Yeah.
Yeah, sorry, I was just gonna say it's something on that. It's interesting. I was just thinking about there's this healer channeler person. His name's Phil Good. He doesn't do any appointments. He only allows his schedule to open up for the next day. So that day he's like, tomorrow I have these times available, and he doesn't make any plans with people. Which is like, honestly, he's like unreal. It's an unreal thing.
I would love for you to have him on your pod first.
No, we're getting him first. It's just so, and then he said, he's like, you know, my guides told me that if we're existing here, but then again, we're like interdimensional, or we're like, there's like an infinite possibility. So every time you're making a plan, it essentially is like using an energy, or there's like an energy that's created when we make a plan, maybe next week for an interview. There's like that plan is existing in the ether, and it could cause like energetic residue or whatever. And it was just fascinating to think about all the ways in which essentially when your calendar is planned out for a year in advance, days in advance, you make all these plans with people, like you are stretched because in your mind you're here, but then you're also all these other places because you have all these other plans.
Yeah. I think it depends on the personality type.
For sure.
Some people, that's like what they thrive on, is having that structure. Some people, structure makes them go crazy.
Yes.
So this guy, what's his name? Dan Good?
Phil Good.
Phil Good. Is he a doctor? Dr. Phil?
No. No.
A doctor of spirit?
Yeah, literally. Yes.
So
Phil
for him, he has the personality type that's such that, you know, the confines wig him out. Whatever that relates back to, probably some childhood something, or maybe ancestral, I don't know, whatever. You know, but then for some other people, they need that containment in order to feel safe enough to travel. You know, and so it's like training a dog, you know, which I'm not a dog trainer or whisperer or anything, but I've heard that sometimes you want to kind of put a dog into like a submissive position to like let them know that like you're in charge. And then once they have the sensation of like, okay, cool, there's some structure in this house. Okay, I can go play.
Yeah.
You know, same thing with children. Not that they need to feel, you need to put them in, like, roll them on their belly and put them in a submissive position, but they need to feel like you're in control. Yeah. And if they feel like, okay, daddy and mommy are in control, this feels like, wow, I cry, they're there. You know, like if they show up for me, then they'll start to wander a little bit further away, you know, and then they come back, they wander away, they hurt themselves, there's a boo-boo, they come back, full support, like, whoa, this is a supportive environment that I live in, you know, and then they wander away further. So I think it's like, it's a balance of, me personally, I start to wig out if I don't have any structure. And then when I have too much structure, I will feel myself start to kind of sabotage it.
Same. Yeah, I'm a good sabotager.
It's like a roller coaster.
Same.
Yeah.
I'll just like fucking eat.
Me too.
I'm like, I need a damn treat.
Do you ever open?
I'm structured. I need a treat.
Do you ever open your fridge like 5 times thinking that something might all of a sudden suddenly appear?
Yes.
It's just like still just eggs, butter, and
You're like,
sauerkraut.
I wonder if I could make a pancake with
Yes.
this. Dude, the food I used to like invent just to create a treat. This was a treat. Thank you. No, truly, I really enjoyed this conversation. And the book is incredible. I think it's like one of those books, which I love, that you can just have at the ready and like open it and find something that you could implement today. It's called The Align Method. I think your podcast is incredible as well.
Thank you.
The Align Podcast.
I appreciate that.
What I love about your podcast is like you you're very mobile with your pod. I don't know how you've been recently, but it's kind of cool. Like,
oh yeah, I go places.
Yeah.
Yeah, I just got back I did a podcast with Bruce Lipton
No
in Santa
way.
Cruz. Yeah, I could link you guys up if you want.
Please.
He's great. He's one of my favorites. That's been one of the most popular episodes as well.
He's iconic.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, he's one of those guys. He gave me a jar of weed too. He
Sick.
grew it himself. I was so excited.
Cool.
So he was the
Yeah.
first guy. He was the first guy that when I was like 16, I think I read the Biology of Belief, and that at that point I was just obsessed with like bodybuilding, deeply insecure, still insecure, but you know a little bit more evolved. I'm like an evolved insecure.
Yes, of course.
Ram Dass, since we started talking about Ram Dass, I'll finish with Ram Dass. He talks about having your neuroses, you know, so he's got like his sexual perversions or feeling like unwanted or feeling, you know, all the things. And said with time, none of the neuroses go away. They just kind of become more like your children. And so at one point, the neuroses, you give them power by maybe running away or maybe, you know, having fear around them. But, you know, you come to a point where you're like, oh, like, yeah, there's that
I love
you know,
them.
feeling. Yeah, there's that feeling like I'm not loved in this room. I walk into the room and like, these people don't like me. You know, it's like, oh, like there that thing is like, oh, like how sweet.
Yes.
You know, and you can kind of create a little bit of separation, but not disassociation. You know, it's more like deeper association or acceptance and love, but not being disempowered by it. And so that Ram Dass, late into his life, that was his perception of his neuroses that he had throughout his life. Is like they're all still there, but now they're like his children. And so he can, you know, sit down and we can have tea and, you know, like, oh yeah, there you are popping up again. I don't know why I was talking about Ram Dass. I love Ram Dass. That's what I'm trying to say.
Yes.
Yeah.
We were talking, the mobile, Bruce Lipton. And then we
Yes.
ended with the Ram
Oh,
Dass.
so sorry, that was very, very tangential way of describing the Bruce Lipton stuff. So he was the first guy to get me into going from being like bodybuilding obsessed and all that stuff. He kind of started to change my mind into more of this like mind-body relationship, you know, and epigenetics and how our thoughts start to, you know, form our bodies. And so he was in large part responsible for like the production of like the Align method and all that stuff. And so it's such a fascinating thing to get to show up now 17 years later or whatever and be like in his house and like trading, you know, doobies and stuff. It's such a fascinating thing. Such a fascinating thing the way that life works that
That's
way.
Yeah.
Like literally like thinking back
Full
to
circle.
my little 15-year-old self, you know, just
Dude.
slamming protein bars and having diarrhea farts and whacking off and, you know, like I'm just like there, you know, and then all of a sudden, like fast forward, here I am with the guy like smoking a doob.
Wow.
Amazing.
Very fascinating how life works.
We manifested it.
Yeah, truly.
You know, well, what is manifestation?
I know.
It's like-
Let's not get.
you walked in that direction. Eventually, you arrived someplace.
Where can people find and connect with you?
Well, I think you guys mentioned Align Podcast. That's like a place. So that's the same thing on Instagram, Align Podcast. And I try to post things that are supportive to people and do the best I can with that in the book. And I think those are great places. There's an online program that goes, it's like the addendum to the book, but there's a whole bunch of free goodness before that. So if you just go into the Align Podcast world, you'll find lots of things that help further this conversation.
So good.
Love
Thank
it.
you, Aaron.
Yeah, of course.
You're the best. All right,
This
y'all.
is so fun.
We'll see
Appreciate
you
it.
next time.
All right, guys. We love you. Bye. Bye.